Computer. Hello and welcome to my show. I'm Jeannine Vegh and I'm with discerninggal.com. And with me today in this video blog is Michelle Risser, who is a licensed independent social worker. So hello, Michelle. Thank you for joining me.
Hi, Jeannine. Thanks for having me on.
Great. So first I'm going to read Michelle's bio to make sure that everybody knows a little bit about her background. And then we're going to talk about about her business and what she does. Michelle helps moms who work as therapists overcome burnout and find their spark at joyfulhappymom.com. She also works as a mental health therapist in private practice in Worthington, Ohio, providing individual therapy with a focus on perinatal and postpartum mental health, along with EMDR for birth trauma. Michelle has a bachelor's degree in anthropology and a master's degree in social work, both from The Ohio State University. For fun, Michelle has lots of hobbies, including knitting, hiking, singing in a choir, and playing the guitar. So I also know that Michelle is married and raises a young girl, and she recently survived breast cancer. So how do you do it, Michelle? Are you a magician or, it's too much work?
The first thing I want to say is when I was going through breast cancer, I did have to cut back quite a bit. Mm-hmm. One of the hardest things about that whole journey for me was having to tell my clients what I was going through and cut back my caseload. I cut it back significantly. I was seeing about 8 to 10 clients a week. I did continue to work all through it, but about half of what I was doing before. Cut back a lot, asked for help a lot. And also 1 month after I started treatment, COVID hit and everything shut down. So suddenly I was working from home. I wasn't hardly ever leaving my house except to go to treatment. There were a lot of factors at play, I think, that made that possible. I would not have been able to work the way I was and do all the things and get through that.
Yes, and when you did see clients, things changed with the licensing board, as far as being able to work on telehealth and letting go some of the restrictions in regard to having to get a signed informed consent, which I guess you probably saw that they've changed that back to the old way now. Mm-hmm. So that probably made things a little easier for you too.
Well, it did, because most of us went to telehealth overnight. This was something I had been thinking about for many years, but when COVID hit, it was like, okay, we got to make this work. Mm-hmm. Things shut down on Friday and I saw clients on Monday. So I had a weekend to get ready. So that was helpful that they loosened some of those restrictions.
Yes, exactly. Now, for your Joyful Happy Mom business, are you going to be doing that online and in the office?
So that will mostly be online. Okay. I'm going to be working with therapist moms all over the country, possibly all over the world, and mostly online, although I do have a dream of maybe doing some retreats or some workshops in person as well.
Yes, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. But with regards to Joyful Happy Mom, can you tell our audience what the difference is between being a life coach on Joyful Happy Mom and being a therapist in private practice? What is the difference? What do you do differently for your clients?
Absolutely. I'm so glad you asked, because that is a great question. So in my therapy practice, because I work with birth trauma and because I work with new moms who are struggling with postpartum mood disorders, a lot of what I do is diagnosis and treatment of these mood disorders, as well as trauma, administering screening tests, communicating with their physician, really making sure that they can recover from those symptoms. So it's because of the type of work I do, I know this isn't the case for everyone, but with my clients, it's very closely aligned with the medical model, working closely with their healthcare team. And I do take insurance, which also puts me into taking more of that medical necessity.
Right.
With coaching, there's no diagnosis, there's no treatment, there's no mental illness. In fact, someone is not necessarily appropriate for coaching if they have a untreated mental illness. I would refer them to therapy.
Okay.
For that. So for the most part, I'm working with people who are functioning well in their lives, but they're dealing with burnout, they're dealing with stress, they're dealing with unrealistic expectations in their lives. And, I'm helping them with tools and resources to get them into a better mindset to help them prioritize their self-care. So I'm not treating mental illness at all.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And so this is specifically for therapists who are mothers, but I imagine you also work with other mothers or?
Specifically working mothers.
Okay.
So I do have a passion for working with working moms because I feel like something that we experience as working moms is we always feel torn, especially when we have young kids. We feel torn between our children's needs, our family's needs, our clients' needs, our work.
Mm-hmm.
And what I have found is that therapist moms specifically are taking care of others' needs all day.
Yes.
We are thinking about other people's needs. We are putting them before us in our work, and then we come straight in the door and we switch into mom mode and we take care of others' needs some more. Those are two roles.
Yes.
Where there's a lot of giving. So I feel like therapists, moms in particular, really need a lot of support.
I agree. And also you want to help them, help support them so that they're not dealing with countertransference issues and transference issues. So
Absolutely. Yes. Good point.
To be in the room and be focused. So that's great. And I noticed that you have a free online guide that you give away to people who come to your life coach business. And I love the title, The Therapist Mom Survival Guide. So what is one takeaway that you could tell us, share with us?
The biggest takeaway, and I know we all know this, we preach this to our clients all day long, but it's harder for us to take our own advice, that self-care is truly not selfish.
Yeah.
If we want to help others, if we want to radiate light and joy out to the world, we have to take care of ourselves.
Yeah.
So that would be my number one takeaway is it's not selfish, it's imperative. It's like breathing.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yes. And the more you breathe, the more you get used to taking care of yourself. You get used to with all the practicing. That's what I'm always telling people, practice. And then you'll get really good at it. And it'll become something that you just that you make as a part of your routine, of your daily routine.
That's right.
Because I think what I hear the most from working moms when I am working with them is, which is rare because I would rather give them to you, is that I don't have any time to do a meditation.
That's right.
I don't have time to do this or that or the other thing, take a walk or jog or whatever. And so I imagine that's something that you hear all the time too.
Absolutely. That's actually a big part of my approach is that, it's not, I don't believe that it's an excuse. I believe that working moms genuinely do not have time. So rather than looking at that as an excuse, we'll look at that as a barrier or an obstacle to knock down. So, okay, why don't you have time? And what can we do to get you a little bit of time?
So looking at delegating responsibility.
That could be one way, delegating, saying no, setting boundaries, restructuring your routine, even changing the way you think about it. Like I said, going to the gym, taking care of yourself, those things are not luxuries.
Right, exactly. And the more children you have, the more difficult it can be.
Sure, absolutely. And I only have one child and I already know it's difficult. So I can't even imagine.
Exactly. And she's 5?
She's 12.
Oh my gosh. I guess the last time I asked you that question, she must have been 5.
We've known each other for a while now.
Yes, we have.
Yeah, she's 12.
But I don't, my mom days are like 41 years ago. So
Yeah, you're in a different stage of life. That's
yeah,
okay.
I'm in the grandma stage. So anyway,
I'm
so
in the tweens and early teens.
so that's even so that's where you're dealing with self-esteem issues, and
Yes.
that's when they're going from concrete operations into um, the more thinking outside of the box, thinking of the world as a bigger picture,
Mm-hmm.
and saying their opinions about things
Yes.
a little bit more.
Which I actually love that part. I love that she's her own person,
Yeah,
her own view on things.
I do too. I like it with my grandchildren as long as they're behaving. If we're in a restaurant, put that napkin on.
Right.
Be a stickler for that kind of stuff. But I do love that listening to their imaginations and listening to them tell me the way the world should be, and all
Yes.
that sort of thing. It's like, oh, okay. All right. You say so. Um, and that's from your experience viewpoint. So anyway, so you mentioned the workshops and the groups previously. So tell us a little bit about what the workshop or the group dynamic looks like that you're offering through your coaching business.
Absolutely. So I have a few different things going. I have a Facebook group called the Burnout Proof Therapist Mom.
Oh,
So if there are any therapist moms out there listening, I'd love to have you come join us. And this is just a community space for us to provide support and to help each other burnout proof our lives a little bit.
okay.
So that's one thing. I'm also offering right now, just for a short time, I'm offering one-on-one coaching, and I'm offering a 1-hour deep dive session to really narrow in on one aspect of your life that's contributing to burnout. That could be your routine, it could be your work schedule, it could be something at home, whatever that thing is, we're going to dig into it and start to overcome those obstacles. So that's what I'm offering right now through my website. That's where they can find me. I'm working on, hopefully later this summer to early fall, I'd like to launch a group course that would have group coaching as well as 8 weeks to really overcome burnout and find your spark again. And that's going to be some of those things we talked about a little bit ago, like really getting a routine that works, learning to set boundaries and say no, prioritizing your self-care, overcoming your negative self-talk, all that junk that gets in the way. We're just going to clear that out and support each other in doing that. So stay tuned for that.
Okay.
And then my dream for the future is to be able to offer some sort of local retreat or workshops.
That's a great idea. Yeah. I think that would be a lot of fun where people can get together live and in person and talk about things, talk about being a mom and what it's like, and also to talk about being a therapist and that if it's going to be all therapists getting together. I think this is such a needed business that you're putting together for therapists. I think it's a godsend, really. And
thank you.
Yeah, because like I said, 41 years ago for me, but I just can't imagine being a therapist right now and having children underfoot that I have to take care of. What is the number one concern therapist moms have?
There's an awful lot of guilt, and it goes both ways. It's guilt that maybe you're taking away from your therapy practice to focus on your family, but it's also guilt that you're taking away from your family to focus on your business. And I feel like moms who are therapists just always feel torn, in multiple directions. But then also what we talked about, which is we're giving to others, we're thinking about others' needs all day. When you're a therapist, you know this. There is no kind of, just zone out today and listen to music at your desk. You're on.
Yeah.
the entire time you're with clients. And then you walk in the door as a mom and you're on. So it can be really hard to find time to kind of fill your cup.
Yeah. And you also can't call in sick, or I don't feel like going
Right.
to the office today. You have to, too bad. You have to go in no matter what happens in your life.
Right.
So
One of the things I find difficult is if I do call off or if I do need to change my schedule, I have to find somewhere to reschedule people. And if the schedule's already tight,
oh, yes, definitely. I would imagine that this also makes it difficult in a marriage,
mhm.
not just with the children, but being married. I know, there's that whole, uh, not cliche, but there's that thought that many therapists joke about, that we have the worst relationships. Because,
Like the cobbler's children have no shoes, that kind of thing.
yeah, there we go. Yeah, doctors, kids don't get their appointments. I don't know.
Right.
I have heard doctors are afraid to get shots. So I thought that was funny. But yeah, so that is a difficulty, because I know that when I'm in relationships, even though I'm trained in the Gottman method, as you are too, when I get triggered by something in an argument, the first thing that goes through my mind isn't always Gottman,
Right.
It goes to self-soothe.
Like, which of the four horsemen is this and what intervention? No, that's not what you're thinking.
No, that's not what I'm thinking. I'm thinking, what? I didn't do that, So it's very difficult for us to be in a relationship, in a marriage, what have you. So any advice on that, maybe?
Yeah. So one of the things I want to speak to is I am fortunate to have a very supportive spouse who really is my biggest cheerleader. If anything, he's pushing me to try new things and, to just go for it as far as my business.
Wonderful.
One of the things that I think is specifically tough, though, with therapists, regardless if you're male, female, by law, we can't talk about our jobs. We can't talk about our clients. If we do, we have to talk about it in a very vague, sort of big picture way. So say if you worked in a factory, you might come home and be able to tell your significant other all about your day.
Right.
For us therapists, we're bound by confidentiality. So I feel like it can be very isolating.
Yes.
So I think it's so important to have therapist friends, like you and I bounce stuff off of each other. It's important to have therapist friends, to have networking groups, consulting groups. Your spouse is not always, or your partner is not always going to get what it's like to be a therapist. It's a hard job to wrap your head around.
Yes, it is. It is. And being in a relationship is a tough role as well, because you're both growing as people over the years, and sometimes going in different directions. But it sounds like you do have a good supportive relationship, as you were mentioning, and I think that's wonderful that he's encouraging you to get involved in new projects and new ideas.
Honestly, I'd probably be much more risk averse if it weren't for him encouraging me and pushing me.
Now, I wanted to circle back to discussing the Facebook group. Because a lot of times people, there's that whole thing with social media and how people behave on social media. Do you monitor it and kind of warn people, or how do you approach any kind of issues that come up on there?
I do have group rules in place, and I also make sure that everyone that asks to join, I approve them. So I'm not getting just, some groups can have, spam accounts or fake accounts. So every person that comes, I know is a therapist mom. My group is still growing. It hasn't gotten out of hand yet. It's still a very friendly and supportive space. I hope it stays that way. But down the road, if it does grow, I'll ask some colleagues, friends to help me moderate the group.
Well, that's good to know, because it shows that you're taking care of people. And that's important, because in the social media world, I think people want to know, how are they being protected?
Yes.
In that menu. Now I'm going to switch to the therapy business for just one question.
Sure.
EMDR. I get a lot of people asking me questions about that. What does it stand for? Is it hypnotherapy? What does someone need to know who's curious about doing EMDR?
Oh, I love talking about EMDR. I love EMDR. I was introduced to it myself as a client after a bad car accident in 2013.
Oh, wow.
And that's where I fell in love with it. And then I got trained in it and started doing it myself. So you may have seen there was a video recently on Oprah's show of Prince Harry having EMDR. So there's a video out there of Prince Harry
Prince
having
Harry.
EMDR for his childhood trauma. So what it stands for, eye movement, desensitization, and reprocessing. This was developed by Francine Shapiro, who found that by moving her eyes, it helped her process through difficult memories and they became easier to deal with. So she started this research and she developed this whole system of therapy. It started with eye movement. So you would be watching like this, or people have light bars that move your eyes back and forth. Now they have found that any sort of bilateral stimulus will do the same thing. So like when I'm working with people online, I have them tap on themselves like this.
Oh.
Or if you're in my office, I have these things that you hold and they pulse from side to side.
Oh.
And what it does,
I see,
is, and I'm not going to know the exact science of how it works in the brain, but by crossing the sides of the brain, I think of it as it's like dumping out a file cabinet. So if your file cabinet is a mess and your traumatic memories are all jumbled up in there, wadded up, just shoved in that file cabinet, what EMDR does is it's going to dump it out, sort it, and put it back nice and neat into the files. So the trauma still happened. It doesn't make it go away. It's not like we're stuffing it down, but what it does is it helps you change the way you think about it. So that, okay, that horrible thing happened to me, but it's over now. I'm safe now. It's not still happening to me.
Okay.
So it helps you reprocess those memories, resort them in your brain. It also helps, the desensitizing part is just from the bilateral, that just sort of desensitizes the intensity of the memories. They feel more tolerable.
And this isn't something do it at home, watch a YouTube video and do it, because there's a lot. It's not just that you are doing the eye movement. There's a process to get to starting the EMDR and getting to know the client and finding out what their trauma is before you start doing it.
It is a whole therapy with a whole process. However, though, I do want to mention that for what's called resourcing or preparation, which is basically just finding things that help you feel calm, finding things that help you just sort of deal with everyday life stressors. There are some things that you can find on YouTube where there's like a little smiley face that you watch as it goes through the corners, or there's music that goes bilateral that you can use on your own, just as you would meditation. It's just for calming and grounding, but you certainly do not want to try to process trauma on your own.
Okay. So it's there in like a meditation kind of situation, but not to do therapy at home yourself.
Exactly.
Not a DIY kind of situation.
Right.
Yeah. So, all right. What advice do you have for a young woman or man who is aspiring to be a therapist or a life coach?
Oh my goodness, what a great question. So, well, I think first you have to figure out what kind of therapist you want to be, right? There are so many of us. There's marriage and family therapists, there's psychologists, there's social workers, there's licensed counselors. A good idea, and this every now and then I'll hear from somebody who just reaches out and says, hey, I'm thinking about pursuing therapy, what's it like to be a social worker? What does that take? What's it look, what's your practice like? Who do you serve? And then you could also reach out to a psychologist. You could reach out to a licensed professional counselor, an MFT, and, learn about the different licensure in your area. Learn about what specific population you want to serve. Some of those things are good to know early. Like, for example, if you have any desire at all to be a school social worker or a school counselor, you need to know that from day one, because that's going to inform what internship you do.
Right. And also the type of degree you're going to be pursuing.
Yes. Yeah. Like if you want to do research, you're going to need a PhD.
Exactly. Right. And if you have a PsyD, you're not always going to be able to be a teacher unless the school offers a PsyD program.
Good point. If you know you want to be in academia, you probably want a PhD.
Right. Exactly.
Some states allow people with doctorates to prescribe.
That's right. California does.
So you would want to know that. So you do need to sort of have an idea. You don't have to know exactly what population you're going to serve, but you sort of want to know. And like we were just talking about EMDR, I know that if you're in graduate school, you can get trained in EMDR as a student, and then you come out of graduate school already trained in EMDR.
Oh, that's wonderful. So you don't have to pay for the CEUs, you're paying for it through your college education.
Yeah. Or you could, if you wanted to do substance abuse, I've heard of people getting their certification while they're in grad school.
Right.
So you can get a jump on it.
Right. And some colleges even teach the Gottman method as well, as part of,
so
not mine, but I had to pay the extra money. But
yeah, and it's not cheap either. Gottman is not cheap.
No, it's not. So when I saw that on their website, I was like, why didn't my school do that?
I know. Yeah, but there are some things you can take advantage of in your graduate program.
Yes.
To get a jump start on things. Another, I had another piece of advice. If you are in graduate school pursuing this degree, I would really encourage anyone to use that opportunity to network.
Yes.
Get to know people in the community, get to know people at other agencies, because when you get out, that's going to be the start of your professional network, and that's so valuable.
Exactly. And what my university, John F. Kennedy University, which is now National University, as they've joined together, what they had us do in our holistic degree program, was that we had to be in therapy during our graduate degree because they wanted us to see what it was like to be they wanted us to see what it was like to be a client while we were processing the idea of being a therapist. And then that way we would be able to have a better sense, because even though we had been to therapy years prior, going to JFK, even though we'd already done it before, we had no knowledge of what it was like to be a therapist yet. I found that so rewarding, because my therapist, what she would do is she would talk to me about running the business every once in a while, and she's the one who gave me kind of a head start by saying, make sure you do this and this when you get signed up, when you're ready to go into practice for yourself. But also, I just found sitting in the room was so different as a person wanting to be a therapist. And every time she would say things, I would be thinking to myself, that's that. I bet she's asking that question because of this, Sometimes I would ask her these things. And then when I was in my practicum, I was allowed to talk about my clients with my therapist, and not their names, obviously, but just talk about what I was struggling with. And she would call them her grand client.
That's so cute.
Yeah. I thought that was kind of interesting how she would do that. But anyway, so yeah, it's definitely a business that you want to do a lot of research before you go into it, talk to a lot of people, take responsibility for understanding everything there is to know about the field before you go into it, taking care of yourself, taking care of your own personal issues before you become that therapist, so that you don't drag it into the therapy room. Because as we all know, whatever you're dealing with, your clients are going to be dealing with it.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to
That's
call
for
you on
sure.
the phone and they're going to say, hey, I'm dealing with this. And you're thinking to yourself, oh, shoot, I am too.
Well, and that was never more true than during COVID, right?
Right.
Like
Everybody in the
they're
world.
going through it too.
Yeah.
They're asking us for help. And
Yeah.
I remember once being with a client who was just saying, you know, I'm at the end of my rope with this COVID thing. I've had it. And I was like, I don't know what to tell you. Me too.
Good for you.
Yeah. You know, it's just like, because we were all going through that at the same time. What a bizarre experience for a therapist to
Right.
be helping people through something that we are also going through.
Yes, exactly. I'm a critical incident stress debriefer, so I'm kind of used to being in crises and things like that. And
Mm-hmm.
well, we've both been ex-social workers with social
Mm-hmm.
services, so we've both dealt with those kind of things. But this was kind of different, wearing masks in session and telehealth, and I don't want to be on video. Can you just call me? I mean, it was a struggle for everybody.
Yeah.
It was just a difficult time.
And I found at the beginning of that, I really found myself going back to my social work roots of basic needs. Like, do you have toilet paper?
Yes.
Are you isolating? Are you talking to people in your family? Where are your kids? You know, it was a lot of that sort of concrete stuff that we don't always talk about in therapy.
Yeah. And you were making sure to say only a limit of 2 toilet paper.
Right. Like, why do you have the giant thing of toilet paper from Costco?
You have any for sale?
Right.
Oh my gosh, that was kind of funny to see. It wasn't my first time to witness something like that, though, because living in California, whenever there's an earthquake, you go through the same thing. I was also during the Rodney King riots.
Mm-hmm.
The first time something like that took place, and went to the grocery store, and like there was nothing on the shelves. And I was staying at a friend's house, and she and I were like, we're going to have to figure out what to make here, because there's hardly anything in the store.
Here it's bread and milk when there's a snowstorm coming. Yeah. Like, why does everybody need bread and milk for a snowstorm?
I don't know, because they can make it, right? Oh, well, not milk, but they can make the bread.
Speaking of which, that was another shortage during COVID, was yeast.
Because
everybody started making bread.
I was very proud of women. I was very proud of them for doing that, because it's like, yay, bravo. Or
we went back to our pioneer ancestors and started making bread.
Get that Singer sewing machine out and start sewing. Who knows? And people did, because they were making the masks.
That's right.
Homemade masks. So
that's right.
All right. So last question that I'm going to ask you, since we're speaking about women, who were your female role models as a young girl, and who might they be now?
So one person immediately comes to mind from my childhood, and that was Linda Carter in Wonder Woman.
Okay. When you first said it, I was like, is she in Wonder Woman?
Linda Carter played Wonder Woman in the 70s and early 80s. I loved that show. I used to record it on my little tape recorder. And and I just loved how absolutely fearless and brave and powerful she was.
Oh, yeah. And she was much different than Mary Tyler Moore in, what was that?
Mary Tyler Moore. Yeah, I can picture it.
I can think of the song, her throwing the hat in the air.
Oh,
that girl.
Was it that girl? Okay.
That girl? Wasn't it that girl? I think
it was.
Yeah, I think it was that girl. Yeah. So completely different role model. One was a career woman, and one was more of a fantasy woman.
Yeah.
But, it was, I think, other than Catwoman with Batman and Robin, who wasn't really a role model.
Right. She was a villain. Wonder Woman, came in and saved the day. Maybe that's why I was inspired to be a social worker. Who knows?
Oh.
But I just loved how courageous and brave and fearless she was.
Yeah. So what
I
about,
love those gold bracelets.
oh yeah, wasn't that a magnet or something?
Oh, it did all kinds of things.
I don't think I watched it that much, so sorry, I'm not as
That's okay.
depth on that.
Yeah.
I didn't even think of Mary Tyler Moore's show.
I can't remember that one either. I was too busy watching Wonder Woman
And that
and
was
the
my favorite
monkeys.
show, believe it or not. And the monkeys.
The monkeys. I love
Oh,
that
I
show.
love them. I love them.
Oh
They're
yeah.
too cute for words.
That's
So
right.
who would you say is now, who now is your role model as a woman?
So as far as my career goes, one person comes to mind. That's Brene Brown. I feel like she really paved the way as far as getting us to talk about vulnerability, empathy, and shame, things that we really weren't talking about before.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like she has just blown the lid off of those really tough conversations, and she's helped us all see that vulnerability is strength, not weakness.
Good. That's
Yeah. And then another one, just a group of people who are absolutely my heroes now are cancer survivors.
oh, of course.
You know, the women who had been through breast cancer before me and helped me through it. I mean, I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it now. Complete and total strangers. I
That's
was texting complete strangers. I was texting people I hadn't talked to in 30 years.
wow.
And people just will rally around you and make sure you get through that.
That's wonderful.
Yes. I mean, there really is a sisterhood and a camaraderie. And
Mhm.
it's like, you know, people who have faced cancer and survived, just about, you know, one of the scariest things you can hear.
Yes, and you were doing that partly through the virus as well, the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
You were going through the treatments. That was the kind of the tail end of it, wasn't it?
No, it was the beginning.
Oh,
I was diagnosed in January, started treatment in February, COVID hit in March.
okay. All right.
Yeah. And so having that lifeline of those other cancer survivors who had been there and could sort of talk me through it was just huge. I went to support groups online. I went to yoga online.
Wow.
So those are my heroes.
That's really amazing. I'm very proud of you.
Thank you.
Very proud of you. I hope I never have to deal with it.
I hope you don't either, but if you do, you'll get through it.
Exactly. Exactly. So those are your heroines, and thanks for sharing a little bit about that story.
Oh,
Because
absolutely. I'm happy to. And,
yeah,
you know, maybe my story can help
exactly.
another person, you know?
That's exactly what I was going to say. Well, thank you, Michelle, for being on the show and for sharing with us about your business, joyfulhappymom.com.
Yep.
And so we will, I wish you every bit of success in that business.
Thank you so much, Jeannine. This has been fun. It's been so great talking with you.
Okay. Thank you for
Okay.
joining us.
You're welcome. Thank you. Bye.